Orgrim Doomhammer, member of the Blackrock clan, wielder of the Doomhammer, and second Warchief of the Horde. Orgrim was born before the Horde even existed. He was born on the planet Draenor before they made their transition to Azeroth. When Orgrim was young, it was at a time when the orcs were still kind of separated. They weren't all united, they just lived on the same planet and they each had their own clan that they abided by. But 2 times a year, the orcs would have a special event. I forgot the name of the event, but they would all get together and they would celebrate and talk and laugh and drink and be merry, and it was awesome, right? It was during one of these events that he ends up meeting Durotan of the Frostwolf clan, which if you watched my last video, you know that Durotan is Thrall's dad. Now, this is important for later on. And even though it was against the rules, they end up hanging out, kind of getting to know each other, and long story short, they become best friends, which was unseen, unheard of at the time. They couldn't be friends like that between different clans. They would only meet once or twice a year. Like, years pass, Orgrim and Durotan get older. Orgrim becomes the wielder of the Doomhammer, which was in his bloodline. It was his lineage. He knew that that was going to happen. And Durotan becomes the leader of the Frostwolf clan. Now they continue to rise the ranks. The Horde is actually starting to form. Things are happening with Gul'dan. Story for another time. Orgrim rises the ranks to become the second in command right under the Warchief. During the time that Orgrim was second in command, before they made their journey to Azeroth, he knew that Durotan and Draco were in trouble and Gul'dan had plans to assassinate them, and he actually tried to save them, but he was unsuccessful. He knew that Draco was pregnant. He didn't know that Thrall was actually born, so he had no idea that Thrall existed, right? Now, before I go any further, I think it's very important that we talk about the prophecy of the Doomhammer. As I mentioned, he already knew he was going to get the Doomhammer. It was in his lineage. It came from his father down to him. So the prophecy states, "Through blood, the weapon shall pass, as surely as night begets day, until the elements cry unheard, and pride turns to unbridled rage. The last of the line shall deliver salvation and doom upon his kind. Honor will be undone, and all will be lost before it is found again. A stranger will raise the hammer high, and with it justice shall reign." So essentially what they're saying here is that the Doomhammer is going to be passed down through the lineage, and eventually it ends up in Orgrim's hand. But the last of the line to actually wield it will bring salvation and doom to the orc people. Now hold that thought. We're going to get back to that later. Back to the story. Crazy stuff's happening. Gul'dan, the Dark Portal, they're making their way from Draenor to Azeroth. They make their invasion of Azeroth where they discover humans, blah, 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 blah. While they're there, Orgrim kind of decides, you know what, I don't really like the way Blackrock leads. I don't really agree with him, and I'm his second in command, so we got to do something about this, right? So he kills him. He takes him down, becomes the Warchief of the Horde, ends up having amazing feats. A lot of victories over the Alliance. They take over Stormwind. It was an insane battle. It was really cool, and he was a very great, like, general, very leader, tactician, right? His problem really came from the fact that when he killed Blackhand, he went and he said, hey, Gul'dan is still... Blackhand was Gul'dan's puppet. You know what I mean? So he's like, I got to go take down the Shadow Council too. So he goes to Gul'dan and the Shadow Council with a group of orcs, kills almost all the warlocks. I think he kills all of them except for Gul'dan, and he spares his life. That was his mistake. He spared Gul'dan's life, uses him, says, you're going to help me win this war. He does help him win a lot of battles with the Fel magic and all of that, right? But eventually Gul'dan escapes during the second war and says, you know what, screw these guys. I'm just going to go do my own thing. I'm going to go find Sargeras. We need to bring this guy back to life. So they leave, I believe by boat, screws over Doomhammer, which he took a major part of his army, and he loses the war. Some of them get stuck on Azeroth, which is where the orc internment camps come from, which is where Thrall ended up with Aedalis Blackmore, so on and so forth. If you really think about it, Doomhammer is the only reason we have Death Knights. Like, he spared Gul'dan, and at that moment, he made Death Knights. If it wasn't for that, we would have never have had them. That's something to think about. So let's go back to the prophecy real quick. We talked about how he would get the Doomhammer. We talked about how the last one in the Doomhammer line would be the ones to bring salvation to the orcs and doom. So he brought salvation to the orcs when they came to Azeroth, and they won so many battles, and it was awesome. They took over Stormwind, which is a really big fight, Blackrock Spire, etc., etc. But as he sits there in his orcish internment camp, looking around at all the other orcs, he realizes, man, this is the doom of the orcs. I am the prophecy. Like, we were the salvation, and I brought doom. But now there's the next part, right? The Doomhammer will eventually end up in someone else's hand that is not of his line and will once again bring justice, right, to his people. If you haven't connected the dots yet, yes, I'm talking about Thrall. He gives the Doomhammer to Thrall. But anyways, let's get back to the story. So he's sitting there, Orcish internment camp, he's enslaved, but he's the Warchief. It's not really a problem for him to escape, which he does. He ends up escaping. I think they had like 5 camps that they hit. He successfully helped 4 camps escape, which I think Thrall was in one of those camps. Don't quote me on that one. And when he gets to the 5th camp, he meets his defeat by, Lordaeron army of Alliance. And it was at this point in time, as he lies there defeated, dying, he gives the Doomhammer to Thrall and gives him his armor, actually, hands down the armor, which was part of the bloodline, and makes him Warchief. The reason I mentioned that him and Durotan were best friends and why it had such an importance was because eventually the Doomhammer ended up in Thrall's hands, and it just felt perfect. Like, yeah, he wasn't a part of the Blackrock clan, but he was someone that he could trust. He knew Durotan, that was his best friend, and he said, if Thrall's anything like him, then yeah, this is the guy. Orgrim was such an important character to the story, so iconic, that they actually named the city where the orcs and the rest of the Horde live, Orgrimmar, after Orgrim Doomhammer. And if you notice, the outside area right outside of Orgrimmar is named Durotar, after Thrall's dad, Durotan. In case you didn't know that.